You are nothing, and that's a good thing. Now, that might be a harsh message at first that you are nothing. For many of us, maybe we feel like the world continues to tear us down, saying we're nothing, saying we're insignificant. Now, what I mean by that is not this idea of significance right now. There's a different message today. This message is talking about the fact that when we think of like physics and quantum physics, that you are literally made of nothing. That this mic I am holding right now, it is made of atoms and different chemicals. If we look to the periodic table, we can see that there are different chemicals that form this, that form the breath I am breathing. But when we think of this idea, at least what I learned in physics, that atoms make up everything, what actually makes up an atom? Well, there is the nucleus and electrons. Now, I'm a pastor here in Hong Kong. I'm not a scientist, but I took a lot of science classes in university. And what always confounded me is that within an atom, there is actually a lot of nothing. That the thing that makes up everything is nothing. What? And I remember I had a teacher who told us that the desk we were sitting at is nothing. That it is mostly nothing. Yet these atoms that make up everything have enough substance to them that they form everything. What? I know. My mind was racked. I didn't understand it. I couldn't confound it. I can't even really have the words to say it. Yet when we look at quantum physics, when we look at physics, that is actually true. Now that could actually drive us crazy and be like, huh? Just lost for words. But scripture actually talks about the fact that we are like a vapor. We are the mist that fades. And so the idea that we are nothing, we can actually find some truth in the midst of that. An illustration maybe that can help you understand this idea that we're nothing actually comes from the Marvel comic Ant-Man. That how does Ant-Man become like an ant? How does he get small and shrink down? Well, it's the distance of the atoms. Within the atoms, they get closer, and then he goes and gets smaller. So much so that in one of the movies, he becomes like like smaller and smaller and smaller. Like I don't know really how to describe it. I'm not a scientist, but he goes within this quantum universe to next levels and levels of smallness that when we get smaller and smaller and smaller, it seemingly is unending. And this idea that what you are composed of is atoms and the atoms is nothing can just seem unending. Where are we going to find meaning? Well, in James chapter 4, it talks about this idea that we are like nothing. If I can just open up my Bible here. James chapter 4, verse 14 says, "Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow." That for many of us, we worry and we worry what's going to happen the next day and the next day. Will we just carry on with our business? Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? What is your life? For many of us, we receive a message maybe through our algorithms, Instagram. Oh, everybody else has a greater life than mine. Where is meaning in my life? And James has an interesting word. He says, "You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes." A mist. This something that is nothing and it appears and then disappears. This is how he describes us. We are nothing. Yet I said there's goodness. Where is the goodness in this? If you just pause right before that, well, okay, that's a very depressing message. But he says instead, so instead of thinking you have everything figured out, or instead of wallowing in nothingness, instead you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. That what we ultimately need to do is pursue the Lord's will. The Lord's will. What is the Lord's will? For many people, they're like, oh, well, how can I know what God's will is? God's will, his desire is that you would turn and love him and that he would be able to love you. And in Thessalonians talks about that God's will is your sanctification, that you would be made holy, be made more like him. See, my prayer, one of the prayers I pray is, Lord, remind me that I am nothing, that I am but a mist, I am but a vapor. My meaning is dependent on the Lord. Remind me that I am nothing, yet in you I have everything. that the Lord is the one who says we are valuable. What is your life, James says? Well, let's turn and consider the Lord's will. That the Lord's will for you is good, that He loves you, that the Lord sees you, that the Lord adds value to your life, that what God did is He crossed the distinction from being creator to creation on your behalf in Jesus Christ. That when I consider Jesus, Jesus was nothing in the same sense of what we are saying. That in his chemical balances, the atoms that made him who he was in his matter, the blood that came from his hands, his feet, it was matter. And in those atoms, there was nothing, yet there was everything. That God instills value into creation, that without God, there is no meaning. We are but atoms, and those atoms are nothing. Without God, without a designer, everything is meaningless. That is a word, a phrase that Ecclesiastes says. And yet, what God testifies to is that there is a creator. Ecclesiastes ends, remember your creator, fear God. That is the summation of all things. Fear God, the God of all creation. Turn to Him. And He is the one who can give you meaning. And so if you ever feel like you are lacking meaning, guess what? The God of all creation says you are meaningful, says there is meaning to your life, says that there is purpose, says that there is something more. Different philosophies and other things will run dry, will leave you unsatisfied, but the God of all creation can be the one to satisfy you. May He find you and may He give you peace. That's what this channel is about. 2 Thessalonians 3:16, that the Lord of peace Himself may give you peace at all times and in every way. And so whatever you are feeling right now, may He give you peace. He desires to give it to you. And so may you find it today. Go in peace.